Listen, I've spent decades studying markets, human behavior, and the forces that shape prosperity. And I'm about to reveal something most people never discover. The moment you disclose your earnings, you trigger psychological forces that silently destroy your financial future through envy, misallocation, and the loss of negotiating power. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through these hidden economic principles of financial privacy. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll discover how to protect your wealth, maximize your earning potential, and build lasting prosperity without the interference of those who would sabotage your success. So, before we dive in, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because your financial future depends on understanding these principles that the most successful wealth builders have followed for generations. The economic forces that destroy wealth through disclosure. You must understand something fundamental about human nature and economic behavior. The decision to reveal your income is not a neutral act. It is an economic transaction with profound consequences. Every time you disclose what you earn, you are making a choice that affects your future earning potential, your relationships, and your ability to accumulate wealth. And I want you to grasp this clearly. Most people sabotage their financial future not through poor investment decisions or lack of discipline, but through the simple act of talking about their money. Why? Because disclosure triggers three powerful economic forces. First, it creates information asymmetry that works against you in every future negotiation. When employers, clients, or business partners know what you currently earn, they anchor their offers to that number. They don't evaluate your true market value. They evaluate what you've already accepted. This is not speculation. This is documented economic behavior. Studies in negotiation theory demonstrate repeatedly that the party with less information typically achieves better outcomes. By revealing your earnings, you hand your negotiating partners the exact information they need to minimize what they offer you. Second, disclosure activates envy, a force economists have studied for centuries because of its destructive impact on social cooperation and wealth creation. When people know what you earn, they don't simply process that information neutrally. They compare. They measure their position against yours. And if you earn more, many will resent it. Not everyone, certainly, but enough people that the cost becomes significant. Envy doesn't announce itself openly. It disguises itself as concern, as advice, as friendship. But its effect is always the same. It creates resistance to your success. Now, you might be thinking, but I trust the people around me. Surely this doesn't apply to my friends and family? Let me be direct with you. Trust and economic incentives are separate forces. Even people who care about you can be influenced by envy without realizing it. They may give you advice that keeps you closer to their level. They may discourage risks that could elevate you beyond their reach. They may subtly undermine opportunities that would create distance between your circumstances and theirs. This is not malice. It is human nature responding to economic inequality. Third, disclosure changes how people interact with you economically. Once they know your income, every transaction becomes colored by that knowledge. If you earn significantly more, they expect you to pay more, to contribute more, to cover costs they would normally share. If you earn less, they may exclude you from opportunities or treat your opinions as less valuable. The moment money becomes explicit, relationships become transactional. The freedom to interact as equals disappears, replaced by an implicit economic hierarchy that poisons genuine connection. These are not abstract concerns. These are concrete economic forces that shape outcomes. And the most successful wealth builders, the people who accumulate significant resources over decades, understand this instinctively. They guard their financial information as carefully as they guard their capital itself, because they recognize that information is power, and giving away information about your earnings is giving away power over your financial future. Silence is not secrecy for its own sake. Silence is strategic protection of your economic interests. How financial privacy maximizes your earning potential. Now let me show you exactly how financial privacy translates into higher earnings over your lifetime. This is where theory meets practical reality, where the principal becomes profit. When you keep your income private, you maintain what economists call negotiating leverage. You force every person who wants to hire you, every client who wants to work with you, every partner who wants to do business with you, you force them to make their best offer based on the value you provide, not based on what you've previously accepted. Consider how negotiations actually work in the real world. An employer asks what you currently earn. If you answer, you've just established a ceiling. They now know they can hire you for slightly more than your current salary. They don't need to offer you what you're actually worth to them. They only need to offer enough to make you switch. But if you deflect that question, if you keep that information private, they must guess. And in uncertainty, they typically offer more to ensure they don't lose you to a competitor. This is not manipulation. This is simply refusing to disadvantage yourself. The labor market is a market like any other. Information asymmetry determines outcomes. The buyer wants to pay as little as possible. The seller wants to receive as much as possible. Both parties use whatever information they have to maximize their position. By keeping your current earnings private, you eliminate their best tool for minimizing their offer. You force them to compete based on value, not based on your previous willingness to accept less, but the impact extends far beyond individual negotiations. Over a career, this advantage compounds. Imagine two people with identical skills and identical value to employers. One answers every question about current earnings. The other keeps that information private. The first person's salary grows incrementally, 5% here, 10% there, always anchored to their previous earnings. The second person's salary jumps significantly each time they change positions or renegotiate, because employers must make competitive offers without knowing their baseline. Over 30 years, this difference becomes enormous. We're not talking about a few $1,000s. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, potentially millions depending on the field. All because one person understood that financial privacy is not about hiding. It's about maximizing economic outcomes. This is the secret that wealthy families teach their children, but that never makes it into mainstream financial education. Discretion is profitable. Now, you might worry that refusing to disclose earnings makes you seem difficult or uncooperative. Let me address this directly. Professional negotiation requires boundaries. Every successful business person understands this. When someone asks what you earn, you can simply redirect. I'm focused on understanding the value I can bring to your organization and ensuring we arrive at fair compensation based on that value. This is not evasive, it's professional. It demonstrates that you understand business and that you respect both parties enough to negotiate based on substance, not on arbitrary historical numbers. Financial privacy also protects you from perhaps the most insidious wealth destroyer, lifestyle inflation driven by social comparison. When your peers know what you earn, pressure increases to display that wealth, to live in the right neighborhood, to drive the appropriate car, to take the expected vacations. These pressures are real economic forces. They push people to consume rather than invest, to spend rather than save, to prioritize appearance over substance. By keeping your income private, you free yourself from these expectations. You can live below your means without judgment, accumulating capital instead of consuming it, building wealth instead of displaying it. This is how fortunes are actually built, not through spectacular earnings alone, but through the combination of strong earnings and disciplined capital accumulation. And disciplined capital accumulation requires freedom from social pressure, freedom that financial privacy provides. The people who achieve true financial independence are rarely the ones displaying their wealth. They are the ones quietly accumulating it, protected by discretion from the forces that would compel them to spend rather than save. The hidden costs of financial disclosure in relationships. Let me turn now to perhaps the most painful aspect of financial disclosure, how it destroys relationships. This is where the economic and the personal intersect, where market forces meet human emotion. And I want you to understand this clearly, because the damage here is often irreversible. Money changes relationships, not because money itself is corrupting, but because knowledge about money activates powerful psychological forces that most people cannot control. When family members know what you earn, dynamics shift in ways that are subtle but profound. If you earn significantly more than your siblings, every family gathering becomes tinged with resentment. Not necessarily overt conflict. Often it's more subtle than that. It's the assumptions about who should pay for dinner, the expectations about who should help with family expenses, the unspoken belief that your success creates obligations to redistribute your earnings to those who earn less. These expectations may seem reasonable on the surface, but they transform relationships from voluntary bonds of affection into obligatory economic arrangements. I've watched this pattern destroy families. A successful child feels pressure to support parents or siblings indefinitely, not because of genuine need, but because the family knows the money is there. The successful person begins to feel used, resentful of demands that never end. The family members feel entitled, resentful that someone they consider no more deserving has so much more. Both sides feel wrong. Both sides feel the relationship has become transactional, and the warmth that once existed evaporates, replaced by financial calculation and mutual resentment. The same pattern plays out in friendships. When friends know what you earn, the relationship becomes unbalanced. If you earn more, they expect you to pick up checks, to fund activities, to subsidize their lifestyle. If you refuse, you're seen as selfish, despite having worked hard for every dollar. If you agree, you create dependency and resentment. They resent needing your generosity. You resent being treated as an ATM rather than a friend. The friendship that once provided genuine connection becomes another financial obligation, another relationship where money dominates what should have been mutual respect and affection. Now, you might object that true friends wouldn't behave this way, and you would be partially right. True friends who never face financial temptation might maintain pure relationships, but introduce significant income disparities and knowledge about those disparities, and watch what happens. Human nature asserts itself. Envy creeps in. Assumptions form. Expectations develop. And friendships that seemed solid begin to crack under financial pressure. This is why the wealthiest families teach financial discretion as a core value, not because they're ashamed of their wealth, but because they understand that disclosure invites problems that discretion prevents. They understand that relationships survive better when financial information remains private, when people interact based on shared interests and mutual respect rather than on economic comparison and calculation. But there's another cost to financial disclosure that's even more insidious. It invites advice from people unqualified to give it. The moment people know what you earn, they feel entitled to tell you what you should do with it. They second-guess your decisions. They criticize your priorities. They project their own financial anxieties and values onto your situation. And here's the crucial point. Most of this advice is terrible. It comes from people who have not achieved what you've achieved, who do not understand your circumstances, who are motivated by their own insecurities rather than by genuine concern for your well-being. Financial decisions are deeply personal. They require understanding your goals, your risk tolerance, your time horizon, your values. No one else has complete information about these factors. Yet once people know your income, they assume they have enough information to judge your choices. They tell you you're being too conservative or too risky, too generous or too stingy, too focused on work or too focused on consumption. This noise is not helpful. It's destructive. It creates doubt where you need conviction. It introduces external values where you need clarity about your own priorities. Financial privacy protects you from this interference. It allows you to make decisions based on your own judgment, advised only by professionals you've chosen specifically for their expertise and alignment with your goals. It keeps your financial life clean of the opinions, assumptions, and projections of people who mean well but lack the information and expertise to provide useful guidance. This clarity is invaluable. It allows you to build wealth according to your own plan rather than being pulled in multiple directions by conflicting advice from unqualified sources. Strategic communication without full disclosure Now, I anticipate your concern. You're thinking, but surely there are situations where I must discuss earnings, job negotiations, financial planning, family decisions. How do I navigate these without lying? This is the right question. Financial privacy does not mean dishonesty. It means strategic communication that protects your interests while maintaining integrity. Let me show you exactly how to do this. In job negotiations, deflect questions about current earnings by refocusing on value. When asked what you currently make, respond with questions about the role's responsibilities, impact, and market range. I'm more interested in understanding what this position typically compensates based on the value it creates for your organization. This redirects the conversation from your past to their needs. If they persist, you can simply state, I prefer to evaluate opportunities based on the role itself rather than my previous compensation, which may reflect a different market, different responsibilities, or different timing. This is not evasion, it's professional boundary setting. No employer has a right to know your previous earnings. In fact, many jurisdictions now prohibit asking about salary history precisely because it perpetuates wage inequalities and disadvantages candidates. You are simply exercising your right to negotiate based on value rather than history. Any professional negotiator understands and respects this. With family, you can acknowledge financial success without providing specific numbers. I'm doing well and I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had conveys positive circumstances without inviting the problems that specific figures create. If pressed for details, you can honestly explain your philosophy. I prefer to keep specific numbers private because I've found that discussing money often complicates relationships. It's not about hiding anything, it's about keeping our relationship focused on what matters most. Most reasonable people will respect this boundary once you explain the reasoning. For financial planning, work with qualified professionals who are bound by confidentiality. They need accurate information to provide useful advice, but that information stays between you and them. This is entirely different from casual disclosure to friends or family. Professional advisors have both legal obligations and professional incentives to keep your information private and to provide advice based solely on your best interests rather than on personal feelings or social comparison. The key principle underlying all strategic communication about finances is this: share information only when doing so clearly serves your interests, only with people who need that information to help you, and only under circumstances that protect confidentiality. This is not secrecy for secrecy's sake. It's strategic information management that sophisticated people practice in every area of business and personal finance. You must also learn to deflect the casual questions that come up in social situations. What do you do? Is fine to answer. Your profession is public. But when the conversation drifts toward you, must make good money doing that, simply smile and change the subject. I do all right. More importantly, I really enjoy the work. Tell me about your situation. This acknowledges the question without answering it, while demonstrating interest in the other person, a combination that usually satisfies curiosity without providing dangerous information. There will be moments when someone persists, when they push for specific numbers despite your deflections. In these moments, be direct. I appreciate your interest, but I make it a policy not to discuss specific financial details. I'm sure you understand. Delivered with confidence and without apology, this usually ends the inquiry. If someone continues to push after a clear boundary, that tells you something important about their respect for your autonomy. Information worth having. Understanding strategic communication also means recognizing when you're being manipulated through financial questions. Some people ask about earnings not out of innocent curiosity, but to gain advantage. Employers want to lowball offers. Salespeople want to calibrate pitches. Acquaintances want to assess whether you're worth cultivating. When you feel the question comes from calculation rather than genuine interest, you're probably right. Trust that instinct and maintain your boundaries firmly. Financial privacy requires practice. Initially, deflecting financial questions may feel awkward or rude. This discomfort is social conditioning. You've been taught that refusing to answer personal questions is impolite. But politeness does not require self-sabotage. Politeness does not demand that you provide information that damages your interests. Real sophistication means knowing when to decline answering questions gracefully, protecting yourself while maintaining relationships. This is a skill that successful people develop and that separates those who build lasting wealth from those who merely earn and spend. Building lasting prosperity through financial discretion. So we arrive at the crucial question: how does all of this translate into actual wealth over a lifetime? How does financial privacy become financial success? Let me connect these principles to the practical reality of wealth accumulation, because understanding the mechanism is what transforms knowledge into action. The path to prosperity requires not just earning money, but keeping it, growing it, and protecting it from the forces that would strip it away. And financial discretion is the fortress wall that makes everything else possible. First, recognize that wealth accumulation is fundamentally about the gap between what you earn and what you spend, sustained over decades. This seems obvious, but most people sabotage this gap through social pressure. When others know your income, pressure increases to spend at a level appropriate to that income. You face expectations about where you live, what you drive, where you vacation, what you wear. These expectations are powerful because they're enforced not through explicit demands, but through subtle social cues. The raised eyebrow when you suggest a modest restaurant, the comments about your old car, the questions about why you're not moving to a better neighborhood. Financial privacy eliminates this pressure. When people don't know what you earn, they can't judge whether your lifestyle matches your income. You're free to live significantly below your means without facing questions or criticism. This freedom is enormously valuable. It allows you to save and invest aggressively while maintaining comfortable but not extravagant consumption. Over decades, this compounds into serious wealth. The person earning $100,000 and saving 40% builds far more wealth than the person earning $200,000 and saving 10%, yet the first person faces no social pressure because no one knows their income makes their modest lifestyle a deliberate choice rather than a financial constraint. Second, financial privacy protects you from direct requests for money. This may sound harsh, but it's reality. When family, friends, or acquaintances know you have substantial income or assets, requests for loans, investments, or gifts multiply. Each request creates a dilemma. Refuse and damage the relationship. Agree and lose money you could have invested for your own future. Most of these requests are well-intentioned, but good intentions don't make them good financial decisions. The person asking for a loan may genuinely plan to repay, but statistics show most personal loans are never repaid in full. The person pitching an investment opportunity may believe in it sincerely, but most business ventures fail. By keeping your financial situation private, you dramatically reduce these requests. People don't ask for money they don't think you have. And when the occasional request does come, you can honestly say, I wish I could help, but my financial situation doesn't allow for that right now, without having to explain that you've chosen to invest in your own future rather than in their venture. This protects both your capital and your relationships. You avoid the resentment that comes from repeatedly saying no, and you avoid the financial losses that come from saying yes to preserve relationships. Third, financial discretion allows you to take strategic risks that build wealth. When you're not constantly defending your financial choices to others, when you're not subjected to the doubts and fears of people who don't share your vision, you can make bold moves. You can invest in opportunities others don't understand. You can start businesses that seem risky to conventional thinking. You can hold investments through volatility when others would panic. The most significant wealth is often built by people who zigged when others zagged, who saw opportunities others missed, who had conviction when others doubted. This requires independence of thought and action, independence that financial privacy protects. I've seen this pattern throughout my career studying economic behavior. The families that build lasting wealth across generations do so partly through good investment decisions, certainly, but they also do so through consistent discretion about their financial affairs. They don't broadcast their successes. They don't display their wealth ostentatiously. They live well but not wastefully. They give generously but strategically to causes rather than to individuals through structures that provide tax benefits rather than through casual gifts that create dependency. This discretion protects them from requests, from envy, from social pressure to consume rather than invest. It allows them to compound wealth across decades because nothing forces them to deplete capital to maintain appearances or satisfy expectations. You must also understand that financial privacy gives you control over your narrative. When people don't know your exact financial situation, they can't define you by your income. You're free to be valued for your character, your contributions, your relationships, rather than for your economic position. This may seem like a soft benefit compared to the hard economics we have discussed, but it's profoundly important to quality of life. Being seen as a person rather than as an income level, being valued for who you are rather than what you have, this is what makes success meaningful rather than isolating. Now, let me be absolutely clear about what I'm not saying. I'm not advocating for dishonesty. I'm not suggesting you hide illegal income or evade taxes. I'm not recommending that you deceive your spouse about household finances or withhold information from people who genuinely need it to help you make good decisions. Financial privacy is about boundaries, not lies. It's about controlling who has access to sensitive information that could be used against your interests. It's about recognizing that most people don't need to know your financial details and that you're not obligated to satisfy their curiosity. The discipline of financial discretion must become habitual. Every time you're tempted to mention your salary, your bonus, your investment returns, your home value, pause. Ask yourself, what do I gain by sharing this information? What do I risk? In most cases, you'll realize the risks far outweigh any benefits. The momentary pleasure of impressing someone, the brief satisfaction of defending a purchase by revealing you can afford it. These fleeting emotional payoffs aren't worth the long-term cost of disclosure. Train yourself to deflect financial questions automatically, to keep conversations focused on ideas and experiences rather than on income and expenses. Remember, wealth is not just about accumulation, it's about protection. You must protect your capital from taxes, from inflation, from bad investments. But you must also protect it from human factors, from envy, from requests, from social pressure, from your own temptation to consume for status. Financial privacy is one of your most powerful protective tools. Use it consistently, practice it consciously, and defend it firmly. Your future prosperity depends on it. The path I've laid out before you today is not complicated, but it requires discipline. It requires going against social conditioning that tells you to be open about money. It requires resisting the temptation to impress others with financial success. It requires valuing long-term wealth over short-term social approval. But I've spent decades studying how prosperity is actually built, and I can tell you with absolute conviction, the people who achieve lasting financial success almost always practice financial discretion. They guard information about their income and assets. They deflect questions. They maintain boundaries. They understand that silence about money is not secrecy, it's strategy. So today, make this commitment, starting now. You will treat information about your income as strategically valuable. You will share it only when doing so clearly serves your interests. You will deflect casual financial questions politely but firmly. You will resist social pressure to display wealth. You will build your fortune quietly, protected by discretion from the forces that would strip it away. This is not hiding, this is wisdom, this is not secrecy, this is strategy. This is the path to prosperity that the wealthy follow and that anyone with discipline can walk. The question is, will you have the courage to be discreet in a world that demands disclosure? Will you have the strength to be private in a culture that celebrates exhibition? Will you build your wealth quietly while others broadcast theirs? That choice, as always, is yours. But now you understand what that choice means. And and the prosperity that financial discretion makes possible. Take this principle, apply it daily, and watch how it transforms not just your wealth, but your relationships, your peace of mind, and your freedom to build the life you truly want. The fortress wall of privacy protects everything you're building. So build it high, guard it well, and let your results speak when the time is right.